Okay, so my other video kinda blew up, but I need another viral video idea. How about Pong, but you're the ball and it's 3D and in first person? Sounds good, right? Alright, let's start then. So if you somehow don't know how Pong works, it's basically ping pong or table tennis but in 2D, where you control these paddles and hit this ball back and forth until someone eventually loses. I've actually already remade Pong multiple times, so this will be easy, right? Except for the fact that literally every game mechanic will have to work completely differently, because, well, it's not 2D and it's in first person and you're the ball. But oh well. First I added a capsule collider, or as some people like to call it, a bean. But you don't hit beans around in Pong, well at least I don't think so. So unfortunately, I'm sorry, I had to sacrifice the bean and replace it with a much more spherical object, a sphere, because I don't know if you know this, but that's the shape of a ball. Next I needed that ball to move, so I gave it a rigid body and sure enough, it moved, but maybe not in the right direction. I then slapped on a first person movement script and I could walk around and jump and slide as a ball. Now, while this was pretty cool, how exactly did it fit into Pong? To be honest, I hadn't actually thought through how this game was going to work at all, and I really didn't know how I was even going to make this 3D. But then I thought of my plan. Instead of keeping the graphics seen in the original game and changing them into 3D, because let's be honest, they're pretty bad and like what would they even look like in 3D anyway, I decided that I was going to add graphics that looked like actual table tennis or ping pong. So like the ball is on an actual table. How crazy is that? With my new goal in mind, it was time to actually start working to complete that goal. So I made these big rectangular prisms, I think that's what they're called, which acted as a placeholder for the paddles for now. The thing is, when you ran into them, you just stopped, and as you probably know, in Pong, the ball is bouncy, and instead of stopping when running into walls, it bounces back. You might think adding this would be pretty simple. I mean, I could just give the ball a physics material and give it some bounce and it should work, right? Well, apparently not. While that does work in 2D, for some reason the bounce on the physics material works completely differently in 3D, meaning I would have to resort to another option. I was going to have to code the bouncing myself. I found this Unity function where you give it a direction and the normal of a plane, which is like a vector facing straight up from a plane, and it will give you back a new reflected direction, very similar to how the bouncing works in Pong. So I incorporated this into my collision code and it worked perfectly, is what I would say, but my attempts didn't really work, and so I went to my good old friend Stack Overflow for some very handy code which is now mine. And what a surprise, the bouncing works, how cool. All it took was Ctrl+C and Ctrl+V. It's actually surprisingly fun to just move around and try to conserve your speed and momentum while bouncing back and forth on the paddles, and I kind of spent way too long doing just that. But I have a game to make, so I really need to get cracking. Now, because this game is going to have fancy, kind of realistic graphics, I need to add some, well, fancy, kind of realistic graphics. So because I have very minimal 3D modeling skills, I went to my favorite store, the Asset Store, and purchased for free a very nice table tennis model set with a table and some paddles. I then put it into the game and it looked like a table tennis table, because it was one. I positioned the paddles in spots so that they looked as if they were playing table tennis, and now you could play Pong on a real ping pong table with real paddles. Well, at least somewhat real. But as you might be able to tell, it's actually pretty boring just bouncing onto these stationary paddles, and it's quite easy and you can also just fly off into the void. So I added some walls to keep you contained and make bouncing much more fun, and also made the paddles move. I thought it would be cool at first to make the paddles kind of like how the AI moves in Pong, where it follows the ball and always has a pretty high chance of hitting it. I added this and it actually feels really similar to the original Pong because it makes it seem like the paddles are hitting the ball and because of the similar bouncing mechanics. One thing I noticed when playing around with this was that the player just kept building up more and more speed as long as they were moving, and that they could easily just stop moving whenever they wanted to avoid hitting the paddle. I spent quite a long time trying to find a solution to this, and I tried so many different things until I eventually found the two different functions which worked. One, called mathf.max, basically takes in two numbers and returns the highest one, and I used it to keep the speed above the minimum. To keep the speed under a maximum, I use this vector3 clamp function to clamp the speed under the limit. After quite a bit of balancing, both of these functions used together made for a ball that always stays not too slow or fast. Okay, now to make some paddles that are actually kind of difficult to hit, because let's be honest, having paddles that automatically move to the ball is a bit too easy. So I just made them move left and right regardless of the ball's position, and now it's actually pretty fun to play and a good difficulty, so yeah. Now I need a background, because not many people like to play ping pong in an endless void. At least, I think they don't. I went back to my favourite store and downloaded an office asset pack and arranged some of the assets in my scene. I created a fairly decent backdrop, with a desk, a lamp and a door, and it looks alright now. Alright, so the game is now functioning, but there's no real reason to play it. So I need to make a score. I just made a number increase every time you hit a paddle different to the last one, and displayed that number on some text, and it worked. With some extra additions like a high score, sounds, and some prompts to start and restart the game, I had finished the game. Before I show you the finished game, I just want to thank you all so much for the insane growth in the last few weeks and all the milestones we've hit, like 10,000 subscribers. I actually recorded this part a few days before when I was at 5,000, and I had to re-record it because of the insane growth. It's really crazy, and I also want to announce that I've created a Patreon, so if there's anyone who wants to support me even more than by watching my videos, you can do it there. Alright, now for the game. Okay, so as you can see, this is the finished game. And, I mean, it looks decent, and it's got some pretty fun gameplay, and yeah. If you ever want to download this, there's a link in the description, but it might not run very well. Just a warning. Yeah, overall, I actually really like this game. If you like this video, like the video, and then go watch my other video where I showcase my first year of learning game development with no experience.